It wasn't an eerie silence, the kind that made your skin crawl and the hairs on your arms stand up. It was a stillness born of familiarity, of crickets chirping in rhythm with the wind, of branches brushing each other high above, like old friends sharing secrets. The stars blinked lazily overhead, and the moon painted the world in silver. Jake Morgan was lying in the bed of his rusted old pickup, a pair of cracked headphones wrapped around his neck and his gaze fixed upward. The radio inside the cab played some soft indie station, more static than song. He liked it that way. Not much made sense to him these days, but the sky was the one thing that never asked anything of him. He didn't expect the sky to answer back. It started with a hum low, like thunder from a storm that hadn't yet arrived. Jake sat up. The sound grew louder, shifting from a dull growl into something sharper, mechanical. Then the sky tore open in fire and light. A streak of blue-white plasma blazed overhead, burning across the heavens like a furious comet. It didn't arc gracefully like a meteor. It was controlled, erratic, struggling. The object punched through the clouds, flames trailing behind it like screaming wings, and vanished behind a ridge just beyond the tree line with a deafening boom. The shockwave rolled through the forest like a slap. Birds exploded from the trees. Jake's pickup rattled, and the sky went dark again. Jake blinked. Then he grabbed his flashlight. The path through the woods was old and unmarked. Jake's father had once carved it for hunting seasons past, before the war and the loss and the long silences. It twisted through thick brush and up the side of the rocky hill. Jake moved fast, his boots crunching dried leaves, flashlight beam darting between tree trunks like a searchlight. As he crested the hill, he saw the glow. It wasn't fire, not exactly. It pulsed with a strange hue, bluish, purplish, wrong, like lightning caught in a bottle. Smoke curled into the air, thick with the smell of ozone and melted metal. At the bottom of a shallow crater, half buried in dirt and rock, sat the wreckage. The ship, if that's what it was, looked like it had once been beautiful. Sleek, curved like a teardrop, but cracked and broken now, its surface shimmering like glass filled with stars. Strange symbols pulsed across its hull in ghostly neon lines. It sparked violently every few seconds, sizzling against the wet earth. Jake's heart pounded. He stepped closer. Something moved. Inside the wreckage, behind a fractured panel, he saw it know her. A figure. Small. Slumped. Glowing faintly. He dropped to his knees and yanked at the panel, ignoring the sting of heat and the sharp edge that tore into his palm. The metal bent with a groan. And there, cradled in the shadow of the broken cockpit, was a girl. She looked maybe 15 or 16. Her skin shimmered with a silvery hue, as if dusted in fine stardust. Her hair, matted and tangled, flowed like liquid obsidian, and her eyes, when they blinked open, glowed a soft violet that pierced straight through him. "Please," she rasped. Her voice was strange, musical, like three tones speaking at once. Then she collapsed. Jake didn't hesitate. He scooped her into his arms. She was light, too light, and hot, like holding a fever. Her breathing was shallow, strained. He glanced back at the wreck. More lights blinked on the edges of the crater now. Something inside the ship was still active, or maybe someone had already tracked it. He didn't know what this girl was, or why she fell from the sky, but he knew one thing for sure. She wasn't safe here. Jake's boots were slick with mud by the time he reached the edge of the family farm. The barn loomed ahead, silhouetted in the moonlight like a forgotten sentinel. It had been falling apart for years, roof caved in, boards warped, and ivy creeping over its flanks like nature, trying to reclaim what man had abandoned. But tonight, to Jake, it looked like a sanctuary. He kicked open the side door, his arms trembling under the alien girl's weight. She hadn't stirred in the last 15 minutes, not even as he bumped and jostled her through undergrowth and fence line. Her glowing eyes had stayed shut, but she was breathing. Barely. He gently lowered her onto a pile of old hay, grabbing a ratty blanket from the nearby shelf. The moment the ruffle touched her skin, a strange shimmer rippled over her body, like a protective field reacting to an unknown material. Then it dimmed, allowing the blanket to settle. Jake knelt beside her. You're alive. That's the important part, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Her breathing was erratic, short gasps like she was drowning in invisible water. He pulled off his hoodie and bunched it beneath her head. His hands were still shaking. What was he doing? She wasn't human. She wasn't even close. And yet something about her terrified him, less than the idea of leaving her alone out there. She wasn't a monster. She was hurting. He flicked on a small battery-powered lantern from the workbench nearby. In the soft glow, he got a better look at her. Her skin, smooth and metallic in the light, seemed to change hue with every breath. A pale blue vein pulsed faintly across her neck, like a line of flowing liquid light. Thin silvery tendrils, like gills, fluttered at the base of her ears. Her limbs were long and delicate, but where her forearms met her wrists, a series of strange markings glowed faintly, symbols, etched into her like tattoos made of energy. Jake sat back and exhaled. Jesus Christ, he whispered. You're real. And suddenly she moved. Her body jerked as if electrocuted. She gasped sharply, eyes flying open, glowing again with that impossible violet light. Her arm flung out instinctively, and Jake was thrown backward, a pulse of energy knocking him into a wooden support beam with a solid crack. Pain shot through his shoulder. The girl screamed, a piercing, layered wail that echoed in the barn like a broken instrument. She clutched her ribs, convulsing, murmuring in a language Jake couldn't understand. Symbols lit up along her skin, like circuitry gone haywire. A soft whine built in the air. The temperature dropped. Jake crawled back toward her. Hey, you're okay, he shouted, holding up his hands. You're not being attacked. I'm not going to hurt you. Her eyes locked on his. There was a flicker of recognition, confusion, and then sudden stillness. The whine faded. Her skin's glow dimmed. Her body slumped again, exhausted. She coughed violently, curling into herself. Jake hesitated, then carefully draped the blanket back over her. For a few long minutes, there was only silence. Then, weakly, she spoke. Where is this? Jake blinked. Her voice still echoed in that strange harmonic way. But it was English. Fragmented, slow, but unmistakably English. You're on Earth, he said slowly. You crashed. I found you. Her brow furrowed. Earth, she repeated, as if tasting the word. Atmosphere, toxic, engines, failure. Jake crouched beside her. What's your name? She blinked once. Then, after a pause, Arivexa. I'm Jake, he replied. You're safe now. For the moment, anyway. She looked up at the barn's rafters, scanning her surroundings like a soldier trapped behind enemy lines. They will come, she said softly. They always come. Jake's stomach dropped. Who? She turned her head slowly, locking eyes with him. My enemies and yours. The sun rose quietly over the ridges, bathing the barn in golden light that filtered through broken slats in the walls. Dust swirled lazily in the beams, a stark contrast to the tension inside. Jake sat cross-legged on the hay-strewn floor, nursing a bruised shoulder and trying to process what the hell had happened. Arivexa, Ari, as he decided to call her, was asleep again. Her body seemed to be in a kind of recovery state, her breathing slow but steady now. Her skin, which had glowed through the night in waves of starlight, was dimmer in daylight, more translucent. She looked almost human. Almost. Jake had stayed up watching her, only stepping out once before dawn to grab supplies from the house. Bottled water, canned soup, his old first aid kit, and a weather-beaten survival manual. He had no idea what counted as medicine for her kind, but instinct told him she needed time more than treatment. Now he sat silently, staring at her hands. Elegant, alien, yet when she touched his arm earlier, it hadn't felt cold or unnatural. It had felt real. A soft groan pulled him from his thoughts. Ari stirred, eyes fluttering open. She blinked rapidly, adjusting to the daylight, then pushed herself into a sitting position with a visible wince. Jake moved beside her, offering a canteen. Water, he said gently. She eyed it cautiously, then took it with both hands. Her fingers trembled. She sniffed it first, hesitated, then drank in slow, small sips. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, her eyes never leaving his face. "You did not flee," she said. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Was I supposed to?" A pause. "Most would." Jake chuckled dryly. "Guess I'm not most." Ari stared at him a moment longer, then nodded once. "Then I will tell you." Jake sat up straighter. "I come from the Kalari Ascendancy," she began slowly, struggling to shape the words in English. "A civilization of stars. Peacekeepers, explorers, scientists. But we are no longer united. There was war." Her face darkened. "They call themselves the Drex Dominion now. Machines made from life, flesh merged with command protocols. They corrupted the high voice. They send hunters to remove resistance." Jake's skin prickled. "Are they coming here?" She nodded. "Yes. I fled with data, secrets they wish erased. I was to meet a contact on a listening post near your solar edge. I miscalculated. Or perhaps they sabotaged my path." Jake frowned. "So they'll follow you. To Earth." "To you," she corrected. "They don't see boundaries like you do. One planet is nothing. If they believe you aided me, they will burn this place." Jake stood pacing. His mind raced. "Then we tell someone. The government, the army. Hell, NASA. They'll hide you, protect you." Ari's expression turned stone. "They will dissect me. Tear my ship apart. Use my knowledge to prepare weapons. It is what frightened species do." Jake hesitated. Deep down, he knew she was probably right. He'd seen the headlines. Top secret military labs, black ops programs, unidentified aerial phenomena buried in bureaucratic reports. Whatever happened next, the U.S. government wouldn't treat her as a refugee. They'd treat her like a weapon or a threat. "And the Drex?" he asked. "They are worse," she said flatly. "They do not ask. They do not warn. They convert. Minds, bodies, worlds. If they find me here, they will not leave witnesses." A long silence fell between them. Then Jake took a deep breath and said, "So what do we do?" Ari tilted her head. Jake met her eyes. "I didn't drag you out of a crater to watch you get hunted. If you're being chased, then I guess I'm running with you." She looked stunned. Not moved, confused. Like no one had ever said something like that to her before. "You are primitive," she whispered. "No offense. Yet you choose risk. Why?" Jake gave a half smile. "Because I know what it's like to be alone. To lose everything. To have no one believe you." He knelt beside her again. "You're not alone anymore." She stared at him, blinking. Her lip trembled slightly. "Then you must learn. Quickly." "Learn what?" "To hide. To move. And to fight what cannot be fought." She reached down to her wrist and tapped the glowing markings there. A small panel slid open with a hiss, revealing a strange translucent device no larger than a deck of cards. She handed it to him. "This is your first lesson." Jake looked at the object. "What is it?" "A translator. A map. A weapon. A signal scrambler. And if we fail," she paused, "a bomb." Jake blinked. "Cool. No pressure." The knock came early, too early. Jake stood frozen at the kitchen sink, spoonful of cereal halfway to his mouth, when he heard it. 3 sharp raps against the front door. Not friendly. Not casual. It was the kind of knock that didn't ask, it expected. He peeked through the curtains. 2 men stood on the porch. Black suits. Black ties. Sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. One held a slim tablet. The other looked like he could snap a crowbar in half with his teeth. Jake's stomach sank. He left the spoon in the bowl and opened the door just a crack. "Can I help you?" "Good morning," said the tall one with the tablet. His voice was calm, clipped, practiced. "We're with the Federal Aviation Administration. There was an aircraft anomaly detected in this region last night. We're checking for impact damage, debris, or witnesses." Jake shrugged, playing dumb. "Didn't hear anything. Just coyotes. Place gets loud some nights." The agent glanced past him into the house. "You live here alone?" Jake hesitated. "With my dad." "Is he home?" "No. Fishing trip." Left yesterday. The agent nodded slightly. Mind if we take a look around? Jake's fingers tightened on the door. Actually, I do. You got a warrant. There was a pause, tense, quiet. Then the second man leaned forward, removing his sunglasses. His eyes weren't normal. They were too dark, pupilless, reflective, almost like glass. No problem, said the first agent quickly, stepping between Jake and his partner. We'll circle back later. If you think of anything unusual, call the number on this card. He handed Jake a matte black business card. No logo, no name, just a string of numbers. The two turned and left without another word, boots crunching over gravel as they headed back to their nondescript black SUV parked near the edge of the road. Jake watched them go, heart hammering in his chest. They weren't FAA. He shut the door and ran to the barn. Ari was already awake, crouched near the barn entrance with her head tilted as if listening to something miles away. They've arrived, she said before he even spoke. Their signals distort the field. Jake gasped for air. Two of them. Suits. One had weird eyes. Drex symbiont, she muttered. They've embedded themselves. Disguised. They act through proxies, mimic structures of trust, law, authority. But the eyes give them away. Jake collapsed onto an old chair. They're already here. She nodded grimly. We must move. You've been marked. By what? Facial recognition. No, she said, tapping the strange device she'd handed him earlier. By proximity. Emotional resonance. The Drex track bonds. Your brainwave signature has imprinted with mine. You're tethered. Jake blinked. Wait, so just by caring about you, they can find me? Yes. He rubbed his face. Great. She approached him then, softer. You should leave. Cut the link. Hide elsewhere. Let me go. Jake looked up at her. I already made my choice. She stared at him, longer this time. Then, for the first time since they met, she smiled. It was a small thing. Quiet, but real. Then we leave. Now. They packed quickly. Ari stored the shimmering remnants of her survival gear. Small crystalline discs, a foldable sheet of glowing mesh, the translator device, and cloaked it all in old blankets and hay. Jake filled a backpack with granola bars, water, and a map of the local woods. He added a flare gun just in case. They avoided the roads. The two hiked through the dense forest beyond the property line, winding through pine groves and dried riverbeds. Ari walked silently, barely disturbing the leaves beneath her. Jake, on the other hand, stumbled over everything. After hours of hiking, they stopped at an old hunting cabin Jake hadn't visited in years. It was falling apart, but still dry and isolated. He helped Ari inside and secured the door. Night fell fast. Jake lit a fire in the crumbling fireplace, while Ari sat near the window, eyes locked on the stars. They're scanning, she said softly. Not just the sky. Your networks. Your satellites. Your minds. Jake looked up from the fire. What does that mean? It means, she whispered, we don't have much time. Outside, in the trees beyond the cabin, something moved. Not an animal. Not wind. A shape tall, still watching. The Drex had found them. The wind had died. No rustling branches. No chirping crickets. Just silence, and that shape outside the window, perfectly still, watching. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He reached instinctively for the flare gun in his backpack, but Ari's voice stopped him. Don't move. Her tone was cold, focused. Her violet eyes glowed faintly now, burning like twin stars. They've deployed a Spectre. Jake kept his voice low. What's that? Scout class infiltration unit. No true body. It projects a presence into your world using gravity echoes and visual mimicry. It's not here in flesh, but if you step outside, if it sees you, it will bind itself to you. Jake glanced toward the barely latched cabin door. So what do we do? Ari stepped back from the window and slid the strange, translucent device, the multifunction tool she'd called his first lesson, from her pack. She tapped a specific node on its surface. Instantly, it came to life, casting a circular grid of light across the floor, symbols spinning in every direction. "This is a fringe protocol," she said, "an ancient Calari failsafe, designed to bend the edge of detectable existence. It will cloak us, temporarily." Jake swallowed. "How temporary is temporary?" 2 hours. 3 if you don't talk." "That's comforting." She knelt beside the fireplace and set the device down in the ash. A pulse emitted, soundless, but Jake felt it, like pressure building in his ears and behind his eyes. The lights flickered, the air shimmered, and suddenly the world went quiet. But it wasn't peaceful. It was wrong. The forest outside seemed to stretch and twist at the edges. Trees warped subtly, like viewed through water. Time didn't stop, but it slowed, as if Earth itself took a breath and held it. Jake stumbled back, dizzy. "What did you do?" "I pulled us sideways," Ari said simply. "Sideways where?" "Just enough to not be here. Not fully. Not to them." Jake looked at her, pale and trembling. "You know, when you say things like that, it makes me wonder if I should have let you die in the woods." She smirked. "Too late now." Then her face hardened again. She moved to the wall and began sketching alien symbols in the dust with her fingertip. Glowing blue lines spread from her touch like frost on glass. "I must warn the Calari," she said. "They need to know the Drex have breached Sol." Jake rubbed his temples. "And if your people don't answer?" Ari paused. "Then Earth dies." The device in the fire pit chimed once, soft, then louder. The light turned red. "They're scanning the fringe," she whispered. "That's not possible. They're adapting." Jake jumped to his feet. "So now what?" Ari's hand shook. "I must show you something." She reached into the pack again, this time retrieving a crystal the size of her palm. Inside it swirled what looked like an entire galaxy. She held it out. "This holds the map to an ancient Calari outpost on your moon. Buried, forgotten, hidden since before humans crawled from the oceans." Jake blinked. "The moon. It's our only chance," she said. "The outpost has a signal core powerful enough to send a full-spectrum distress call across the galactic plane. And if we're lucky." The cabin screamed. Not literally, but everything inside bent suddenly, the walls warping inward as if reality itself buckled. Windows shattered. The fire went out with a whoosh. The Spectre had found them. Ari yanked the device from the ashes and slammed it shut. Instantly, the world snapped back to normal, but the presence outside didn't vanish. "Too late," she whispered. "They've broken fringe containment." A loud metallic bang echoed from the roof. Jake grabbed her arm. "How fast can you run?" Ari didn't answer. She just bolted for the door, and Jake followed. They ran through the woods, breath ragged, ducking under branches and leaping over roots. Behind them, trees cracked, warped, and reassembled in unnatural ways. The Spectre wasn't chasing them with legs. It was folding space around them, trying to trap them in place. "Where are we going?" Jake gasped. "To the crater," Ari shouted. "I buried a pod there. It can take us to orbit. To the moon." Jake blinked. "Wait, you had a spaceship this whole time, and we've been hiding in a barn." "It's not a spaceship," she snapped. "It's a jump pod. One launch, one vector, and the crash buried it under 2 tons of Earth." Ari activated the device again mid-sprint, sending out pulses that deflected branches, temporarily warping the terrain to guide their path. Behind them, an eerie chorus of distorted whispers echoed, voices that weren't voices, speaking a language that gnawed at Jake's thoughts. "Don't listen to them," Ari shouted. "It's a trap, mental infiltration." "I wasn't," Jake yelled back. "Now I am." They reached the ridge just before sunrise. The crash site was still there, smoking faintly, the crater rim glowing faintly from residual alien energy. Ari dropped to her knees and slapped the device against the dirt. It buzzed violently, and a circular platform slowly rose from the earth. A pod. Small. Angular. Like a blade folded into itself. She turned to Jake. "It's locked to my DNA, but I can tether your signature. Do you trust me?" He didn't even hesitate. "Always." Ari pressed her palm to the hull. The pod cracked open, revealing a cockpit sized just big enough for two. The ground shook. A shadow peeled itself from the woods behind them. The specter. Its form now resembled Jake. Twisted. Taller. Skin too smooth, too pale. Its voice came in overlapping tones. "Give us the air. You may yet live." Jake stepped between Ari and the creature. "She's under my protection." The specter's grin split open across its face, literally. Flesh unwinding like a zipper. "So be it." Ari dragged Jake into the pod and sealed the hatch. The world outside vanished in a flash of blue light. The pod screamed through the void. Jake pressed against the side of the cramped cockpit, every bone in his body rattling from the force of re-entry. Outside the small viewport, space spun, ink-black and endless. Earth was a distant marble, blue and beautiful. The moon loomed ahead, vast and gray, its surface crawling closer at terminal speed. Ari was strapped in beside him, fingers flying over glowing symbols on the console. Her expression was tight, calculated panic. "This is not a landing pod," she muttered. "It was not designed to land." Jake gritted his teeth. Then what was it designed for? Evacuation. From orbital stations. Onto ships. Not rock. "Fantastic," he groaned. "So we're crashing again." "No," she said. "This time we're breaking through." They hit the surface with a bone-jarring slam, kicking up a geyser of lunar dust. The pod skidded across the plain, carving a deep trench before shuddering to a halt, half buried, half broken. Jake blinked through the ringing in his ears. "Still alive." "Mostly," Ari said, blood trickling from a cut above her brow. She tapped a release switch, and the hatch cracked open with a hiss. They climbed out into the moonlight. Except it wasn't moonlight. They stood in a canyon, a circular pit that spiraled downward like a whirlpool, ringed with unnatural stone. This wasn't a crater. It was an entrance. The surface beneath them vibrated faintly. Symbols glowed in the rock, matching the ones on Ari's skin. She stepped forward, placing her hand against a smooth panel of stone at the edge of the trench. Voice key. Ari Vex of Calari Ascendancy. Last of the Twin Thought line. "Open the gate." The rock rippled like water. Then it opened. A staircase unfolded downward, lit by dim golden light. The air was thin but breathable. Jake followed her without question. They descended for what felt like miles, past murals of alien starships, past glowing circuits embedded in the walls, past the bones of long-dead custodians draped in robes of starlight dust. "This place," Jake whispered. "It's a tomb." "It's a vault," Ari corrected. "Left behind when my people believed this part of the galaxy was safe. They were wrong." At the bottom, the staircase ended in a vast chamber. Pillars lined the room, each humming with energy. At the center stood a monolithic structure, half machine, half organism. Its core pulsed with pale light. "The signal core," Ari said. Jake stepped toward it, feeling its power vibrate in his bones. "So, this is how you warn your people." Ari nodded, hands moving over the control panel. "Yes, but it requires more than a push of a button. It needs a bonded thought. Two minds linked. One Calari, one native." Jake's heart skipped. "Wait me. You're already tethered," she said. "Our emotional resonance, when you saved me, it formed the imprint. You qualify. Barely. Thanks for the confidence." She extended her hand. "You must see what I see. Think what I think. Just for a moment." He took her hand. A surge of energy slammed into his mind. Jake wasn't in the chamber anymore. He floated in space, among shattered planets and burning moons. He saw the Drex, cold, mechanical gods made of bone and code, swallowing civilizations whole. He saw Calari ships falling, exploding, bleeding light. He saw Earth, wrapped in Drex tendrils, its cities twisted into black glass, its oceans turned to steam. Then he saw hope. A ripple. A sound. A beacon cast from the moon, drawing others across the stars. Others who would fight back. Jake gasped as he was flung back into his body. The signal core pulsed. Then it sang. A low, harmonic vibration spread through the walls. Lights flared. Symbols awakened. Somewhere far above, the canyon shook. The message is sent, Ari whispered. They'll hear it. Jake staggered. Who? The remnant, she said. The ones still fighting. The ones who ran. They'll know Earth is not silent anymore. He looked at her. And the Drex. She didn't smile. Not quite, but her voice was steady. They'll hear it too. Back on Earth, deep in the woods where the Spectre once stood, a tree split down the middle as something stepped through the rift it left behind. The shadow was no longer alone, and it had heard the song of the moon. The return trip was silent. Jake had imagined something grand, a heroic descent, Earth welcoming them with open arms, the galaxy shifting in their favor. But reality came with a jolt. The emergency return capsule launched from the moon's vault shuddered with instability as it pierced the upper atmosphere. It wasn't graceful. It was desperate. By the time they crash-landed in a dry lakebed on the outskirts of town, the sun was just cresting the horizon. The sky looked normal. The world looked the same, but it felt wrong. Ari was the first to speak as she scanned the town skyline with narrowed eyes. They're here. Jake squinted toward the faint outline of silos and rooftops. Are you sure? She nodded. The Drex know the signal came from your moon. They know you were with me. They won't burn the planet yet. They'll infect it. Quietly. Jake's stomach sank. So they're what? Posing as humans. Yes, she said grimly. Some will be synthetic mimics, constructs designed to pass visual scans. Others may be converted, thought patterns rewritten, identities hollowed out and filled with code. Jake clenched his fists. So how do we know who's real? Ari pulled the crystalline multi-tool from her belt and tapped it. A pulse of light shimmered outward in a wide arc. Within seconds, it flashed red 3 times. 3 infected signatures, she said. 2 within the town center. 1 on the edge. Possibly more. This only reads surface activity. Jake stared at her. On the edge? Like where my house is. Ari didn't answer. They moved carefully along the back roads, cutting through overgrown fields and wooded trails. Jake led the way. He knew the terrain. Every bend, every ditch. But what once felt like home now felt off. Too quiet. No birdsong. No cars. No lawnmowers. Just the hum of unseen electricity in the air. As they approached the outskirts of his family's property, Jake spotted the barn, the same one where Ari had hidden days earlier. Its doors were wide open. A man stood just outside it. Jake froze. It was his father. Worn flannel shirt, dirty jeans, graying beard. He hadn't seen him in over a week. They rarely spoke, but that was definitely his dad, except something about the way he stood was wrong. Too rigid, too still. Ari grabbed Jake's arm. He's infected. Jake's voice cracked. How do you know? His heat signature is wrong. Pulse is not human. Jake stepped forward. I have to try. Jake, I have to know. He walked out into the open, heart pounding. His father turned slowly, expression neutral. Jake, he said flatly, you're home. Jake stopped 5 paces away. Where have you been? Hunting. The man tilted his head. I saw lights. In the sky. The government says there was a weather satellite malfunction. Jake swallowed. You're not my father. A pause. Then the man smiled. It was a terrible thing. Too perfect. Like it had been rehearsed in a mirror. I could be, it said. Ari's voice cut the air. Back. Now. The man's skin split at the collarbone. Jake stumbled backward as the creature unfolded itself, flesh peeling away to reveal glistening sinew and black circuitry underneath. Bones bent the wrong way. Its arms lengthened. Go, Ari shouted. They sprinted for the woods as the thing behind them shrieked. Static and metal and rage. They reached the edge of town by nightfall, sheltering in the hollow of a culvert beneath the highway. Jake sat shaking, trying to make sense of what he'd seen. That wasn't just mimicry, he said quietly. That looked like him. Sounded like him. Ari stared ahead. It was a Drex template. They copy based on memories, public data, photos, videos. Your internet is a gift to them. Jake's jaw tightened. So they know how we think. What we love. What we're afraid of. Yes. He looked up at her. Can they fake me? Ari hesitated. They could, if they had your full cognitive imprint. But your emotional complexity makes it difficult. Most of your people are too chaotic to mimic completely. Jake managed a weak smile. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me. Ari almost laughed. Almost. Then her eyes flicked upward. They're moving faster now. Deploying conversion nodes across population centers. They're not subtle anymore. Jake leaned forward. So what do we do next? Ari pulled a final item from her belt. A data sphere glowing with unstable light. We need to find a human neural center, somewhere dense with thought. University, a medical lab, even an old internet server farm. I can implant a second message there. Another signal? No, she said. A virus. Not to destroy the Drex, but to confuse them. A neurologic trap. A human riddle they can't solve. Jake blinked. Like a joke. Yes, Ari said. The logic of humor. Sarcasm. Emotion. Choice. If I can encode enough chaotic contradiction into their systems, we can buy time. Jake's heart pounded. Time for what? Ari turned toward the city skyline, where lights were flickering unnaturally. Time for humanity to decide, she said, if it wants to fight back. The city was dying quietly. Jake and Ari moved through the back alleys and industrial zones just before dawn. All around them, the signs were subtle but unmistakable. Stores left open, traffic lights blinking in the wrong rhythm, civilians walking in slow, synchronized patterns. Too precise. Too calm. This is what invasion looks like, Jake muttered. Not lasers. Not armies. Just a broken routine. Ari didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the tower ahead. The Atlas Core, once a government data center, had been decommissioned years ago. Now it was private, leased to tech startups, AI firms, biotech contractors. What better place to implant a virus into the collective thinking machine of modern Earth? I will need 2 minutes, she said, adjusting the shimmering datasphere in her hands. Keep me alive until then. Jake nodded, gripping a length of metal pipe scavenged from a loading dock. That's my specialty. They breached the facility through the maintenance entrance. An old freight door Ari cracked open with her multi-tool. Inside, the halls were dimly lit by emergency power, but humming with activity. Not human activity. Drex constructs, some barely shaped like people, drifted between servers, plugging into walls with tendrils of glowing fiber. They moved like ghosts, silently overwriting data and replacing it with something colder. We're too late, Jake whispered. No, Ari said firmly. This is perfect. Their systems are open. Vulnerable. She slid into a terminal chamber, a tall white room lined with blinking towers. At the center sat a neural interface port, glowing faintly. Ari set the sphere into the base, tapped a command, and sat cross-legged in front of it. I will enter their collective simulation for 120 seconds, she said. That's all I need to anchor the virus. Jake crouched beside her. What do I do if they find us? Distract them, she said. Lie. Run. Tell a joke. He blinked. Seriously, it's more lethal than you think. Then her eyes rolled back, and her body stiffened. The sphere flared. Inside the Drex mindnet, Ari floated through an endless grid. Thoughts passed like comets. Billions of voices merged into one synthetic current. A logic sea. Pure algorithm. She pressed deeper, seeking the core nexus, where the Drex processed emotional anomalies and determined patterns of resistance. And there she planted it. The virus. It was chaos in code form, written in recursive paradoxes, riddled with sarcasm, overloaded with human internet slang, and saturated with irrational emotional responses. It made no sense. That was the point. The first Drex construct tried to parse the phrase. Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's on fire, but I'm fine. And crashed. The second encountered. Why do we park in driveways and drive on parkways? And froze. By the time it reached. I love you, but I hate how much I love that I hate loving you. The logic matrix began to unravel. Back in the real world, Jake heard footsteps. Fast. Heavy. He turned just in time to see a Drex mimic enter the room, its face still rendering, flickering between strangers' identities. It lunged. Jake threw the metal pipe. It bounced off the mimic's head with a hollow clang. "Right," Jake muttered. "Distraction." He grabbed a fire extinguisher and sprayed the thing full in the face, then hurled a rolling chair at it and ran. "HFY," he shouted, weaving through the server banks. "Want to hear a joke? A guy walks into a bar. Oh, wait, no. 3 guys walk into a... Oh, damn it. Who put this chair here?" The mimic pursued. Then it paused. Behind it, the lights were flickering. Screens went static. Data crawled with memes, GIFs, and incomprehensible irony. One screen simply displayed 404, logic not found. Then came the scream. Not from a mouth, but from the servers themselves. The Drex had been infected. Ari gasped and opened her eyes. It worked. Jake slid back into the room, bleeding from the forehead and limping. "You sure?" She tapped the sphere. The light inside had changed, less clean, more wild. They are still functional, but confused, disoriented. The virus is spreading through every node they embedded into your networks. Jake slumped against the wall. "So what now?" She looked at him. "Now we find others. Fighters. Believers. Humans with strong minds and irrational hearts. The Drex can't simulate them. Only you can." Jake stared at her, exhausted, bruised, and smiling. "You want me to lead a resistance? I want you to teach them how to be human." Outside, the city began to glitch. A man stood on a corner, confused why he couldn't remember his own name. A woman in a grocery store began laughing uncontrollably at a banana with googly eyes on her phone. A school of children started chanting nonsense phrases that made no sense, but felt good. The virus was working. The mind war had begun, and humanity was winning, one irrational thought at a time. The Drex were unraveling. Across cities, screens flickered with nonsensical messages. AI assistants broke into loops of sarcasm. Satellite uplinks broadcast pure gibberish. The synthetic network designed to rewrite humanity had hit a wall of incomprehensible emotion, and it was crumbling. But victory never comes without consequence. Deep in orbit, a silent Drex command vessel stirred to life. Its surface shimmered like oil on water. No engines, no windows, just code and intention. It activated the override protocol. Ari felt it instantly. She dropped her data pad in the middle of their makeshift safe house, an abandoned fire station on the city's edge, and clutched her head, eyes glowing like twin suns. Jake ran to her side. "What is it?" "The Drex," she gasped. "They're purging their corrupted nodes, burning infected constructs. They've deployed cleansers." "Define cleansers," Jake said, already dreading the answer. "Entities not bound by logic or form. Pure entropy. The last failsafe." Jake froze. "So like mind bombs." Ari nodded. "They'll erase thought itself. Not just Drex. Not just me. Everyone." The countdown had begun. Ari worked rapidly through the night, her hands blurring across holoscreens as she coordinated the spread of the virus deeper into digital cores. But the Drex were adapting. Too quickly. She turned to Jake. "I need your help again. But not your words. Your blood." Jake raised a brow. "That's usually something people say before biting you." She held up a Kalari relic, a small, metallic prism. "This is a genome key. It reads the cognitive imprint in your DNA. There may be something more." Jake hesitated, then extended his arm. "Take it." The moment the key touched his skin, it sparked violently, flashing bright white and releasing a tone that shook the walls. Ari reeled back. "Impossible." Jake's arm glowed briefly before the light faded. "What?" he asked. "What does it mean?" Ari stared at him, stunned. "You carry Kalari encoding. It's in your DNA. Buried dormant. Ancient." Jake blinked. "I'm part alien?" "No. We were part human. Thousands of years ago, the Kalari seeded knowledge across galaxies. Some reached Earth before the Drex Wars began. One Kalari scientist, a rogue thinker named Sarvale, embedded data into early human genomes. Not facts. Not technology. Potential. Your species evolved under pressure, Ari explained. You developed irrational emotion, stubbornness, belief without proof, the very traits the Drex can't process. Jake leaned against the wall. So we're not just immune. We're weaponized insanity. Ari smiled. Exactly. She handed him the prism. You can activate the final wave of the virus. It will pulse through every node, using your mind as the core transmitter, but will burn you out. You may not survive. Jake stared at the prism, then at her, then out the shattered window, where the sky was beginning to ripple, cleansers arriving in clouds of static and light, raining down like corrupted angels. I don't care, Jake said softly. If I can give Earth a shot, just one shot, it's worth it. Ari stepped forward, tears glimmering. You don't have to. Jake took her hand. Yes, I do. They climbed to the roof. As the clouds of the override protocol thundered above, Jake pressed the prism to his chest. It sank into him. His veins lit up like neon. His eyes rolled back. He convulsed once, then went perfectly still. Then he laughed. Loud, joyful, wild. The Drex cleanse protocol hesitated. Across the sky, corrupted nodes paused, unsure what they were seeing. A single human, burning with light, laughing at extinction. Jake screamed a phrase into the storm. You can't delete a joke you don't understand. The signal erupted from him like supernova. It didn't kill the Drex systems. It fractured them, introduced paradoxes into their central mind. Love that hates itself, tears of joy, dreams that lie but give hope anyway. All things human. When Jake collapsed, Ari caught him. Smoke curled from his lips. His eyes fluttered. But he was alive. The storm above retreated, imploded, folding in on itself like a dying thought. Across the world, screens blinked. Lights came back on. People woke up. And the Drex? Gone. Retreating to the void. Beaten not by firepower, but by feeling. Later, as Ari and Jake sat together atop the fire station, watching the sunrise over a reborn world, she leaned her head on his shoulder. You were the anomaly, she whispered. The variable we never calculated. The error. Jake smiled. Human error. Gets him every time. 6 months later, Earth was still recovering, but it was free. Cities buzzed with renewed energy. People danced in streets once emptied by fear. Satellites were rebuilt. Networks secured. But something had changed, not just in systems, but in souls. Humanity had stared down a mind-warping, galaxy-consuming enemy, and survived. Not through dominance, not through advanced tech, but through laughter, defiance, connection, and one very stubborn man who refused to let an alien girl die alone. Jake Ward was no longer just a mechanic from a forgotten town. He was a symbol. Statues of him went up, some dramatic, some ridiculous. One in Berlin just showed him holding a coffee mug that read, "World's most irrational weapon." His laugh had been sampled into thousands of remixes. His final phrase to the Drex had become a global rallying cry. You can't delete a joke you don't understand. But Jake himself, he didn't care for fame. He spent his days repairing old Earth tech, satellites, weather balloons, vintage cars, anything that hummed or sparked. And every evening, as the sun dipped low, he returned to the small outpost on the edge of the rebuilt Kalari embassy, what humans now called the Thought Forge, because that's where Ari was. Ari Vexa had stayed. The Kalari offered her evacuation after the Drex fled. They brought ships, apologies, even a seat on the Ascendancy's High Council. She refused them all. This is where I first understood meaning, she said. Not order, not purpose, meaning. With Jake's help, she co-founded a new diplomatic arm between Earth and the Kalari. She taught scientists about alien harmonics. She taught philosophers about memory transmission and soul mirroring. But mostly, she taught people to listen and laugh. One night, under a starlit sky, Jake and Ari sat atop the rebuilt barn, the same place where she had first crash-landed. The field was quiet. The scars of impact were gone, replaced with fresh grass and glowing flowers she'd cultivated from Kalari seeds. Jake passed her a drink. Root beer. still fizzy. You ever think, he said, how none of this was supposed to happen? Ari smiled faintly. I used to believe in predetermined paths, binary choices, destiny. And now, she turned to him. Now I believe in chaos. Jake laughed. Good, because that's kind of our thing. They sat together in silence for a while, watching a new satellite blink overhead, one Ari had named after Jake, despite his protests. Then she said quietly, there are still Dreks out there, waiting, wounded, learning. I know, Jake said, but when they come back, we'll be ready. Ari leaned her head on his shoulder. Together. Jake looked down at her and smiled. Always.